Welcome on into the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode number 81 of season 2025, and it's AFLW Finals time. We finally made it to the end of the home and away season, so that's what we will be looking at today. As always, we'll start this episode with a roundup of all the 9 matches from the final round of the home and away season, the AFLW Round 12. That happened on the weekend. We'll have a look at all the end of season leaderboards for our awards. So that's MVP, Best and Fairest, and Rising Star. No real surprises in any of those 3 who will be on top. But we'll have a look at them. Have a look at how our tips went, and then we'll do a quick preview. Maybe not so quick. We'll see how quick it is. Preview of the Week 1 finals matchups. There's 4 games coming up this week. It's all to play for, and that's coming up this weekend. So we'll finish this episode with our preview and tips for Week 1 of the finals. If you're new around here, we do 1 to 2 episodes every single week. Sometimes men's, sometimes women's. During the men's season, we do 1 to 2 episodes on that. During women's season, we obviously do 1 episode on the women's game. We also do occasional episodes on the men's game, even out of season. So we do draft videos. We did trade and free agency episodes. And there's, of course, also plenty of other stuff. There was an episode that went out earlier this week. Episode 80 was ranking all 668 AFL players from this season. So go back and check that out if you haven't already. I don't think there's too much more to go into. So let's have a look at the finals matchups. We'll start with. There's 4 big games coming up. North v Hawthorn, rematch of last week's game. Just different ground, different home team as well. Carlton Eagles, once again, rematch of last Friday's game. But this time, the other team's the home team. Melbourne-Brisbane, rematch of 2 weeks ago's game. And Adelaide-St Kilda is the final one. So the other 4 matchups going into finals. It was a crazy round 12. There was a lot of twists and turns, let's be fair. Throughout the weekend, there was... it started reasonably straight line, I guess. North winning. Then game 2, it was West Coast fell over. Looked like their season was done, just for Sydney to fall over against Essendon and allow West Coast back in, which was crazy. Not many probably saw that coming. And then on the final day, there was a couple more twists and turns because St Kilda lost to the Bulldogs, which meant that they lost their home final. And Adelaide held on against Fremantle with a game that was winner makes finals, loser misses out. So it was a crazy weekend of football. Crazy results that just twisted and turned the season on its head a lot over that last few days of the season. So it was an exciting finish to the end. Even if we didn't get much surprise at the top of the ladder, kind of went how we expected, with North winning. They already had the minor premiership, obviously, which meant Hawthorn lost and dropped down to 4th because both Melbourne and Brisbane got the job done as was expected. Maybe not as cleanly winning those 2 teams as maybe we expected, but they both got the job done. And avoid North Melbourne for week 1 of the finals. And if they win qualifying final, they potentially get a clean shot to the grand final without North Melbourne, of course. North could lose to Hawthorn, but that's how we see it. Let's jump into these games. We'll work our way through them. From Friday night, there was 2 big games, and we kicked off with Hawthorn hosting Kangaroos. I don't think too many people expected Hawthorn to give a real challenge to North Melbourne. I still believe that Hawthorn are probably the 4th or 5th best team in the competition right now. So there's definitely at least 2 teams that I consider a better chance on knocking North Melbourne off. And the other 2 teams that finished 2nd and 3rd on the ladder. I still also believe that Adelaide are probably at their best better than Hawthorn as well. But the game ended up going pretty much how we thought it would. 10-7, 67 to 2-6, 18. The Kangaroos just kind of blew them away. Late in the second, early in the third, they were up by 22 points at half time. kicked away by a three-quarter time to be 61-9. Hawthorn did manage a goal in the last quarter, but they're second for the match. But it was one-sided pretty much most of the way through. We kind of knew what to expect from this game, and it's kind of what we got. Team rating suggests North Melbourne comfortably won it. Not their most dominant win of the season, but at the same time, I think they just were in cruise control a fair chunk of this, as they have been most of the season. BNF votes, we went Ash Riddell 3, Talia Randall 2, and Eliza West from Hawthorn with 1 vote. A look at some of the team stats for this game. No surprise here that it was dominated by Kangaroos. However, they didn't dominate possession as much as they typically have this year. They still won it by plus 40, but there's been a lot of games where they're at a plus 100 or very close to plus 100 disposals. So a little bit closer in the numbers here. They were, 50 disposals less than their average. But once again, I don't think they were at full pace throughout most of this game. They kind of had it under control. Inside 50s plus 9 for the Roos. Clearances plus 8 for Kangaroos. They had more contested, more uncontested. 6 less turnovers as well for the Kangaroos. So they got the hands on the ball more and they turned it over less. So it's usually a pretty good sign that you're going to win the game of football right there. If you're new around here, we do MVP voting. So we do a player rating for every single player, every single match. Top 5 rated players for both teams get votes. Winning team get 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. Losing team get 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So losing team gets half of what the winning team does. Those votes for this match and for all the matches will be on the screen as we talk about them. I'm not going to read them out, but they are on the screen. So go check. If you're watching the video, you'll see them. Otherwise, we will do the full season leaderboard in about 15-20 minutes once we've finished all the 9 matches. Key players in this game, Talia Randall kicked 4 goals from 8 disposals. Was really good. Probably one of her better games of the season. Pretty solid. No one else had multiple goals in this match. So that's usually a pretty good sign that it was a key forward that played really well. Clearance numbers, Eliza West led the way with 7 metres gained. Was nothing special, but 425 for Ash Riddell. She also had 2 goal assists. Ash Riddell, Amy Smith had 3 goal assists. Don't think there's too much else to go through. Garner, probably not the biggest game of Garner's season, but it was her 100th, so a fantastic effort from her. Moving all along, I don't think there's too much else to go through on this game. It was just a professional effort from Kangaroos. They just showed, again, why they're so far ahead of the competition, and they do it week in, week out. We shouldn't be surprised. They are the best team. They have probably, arguably, the best 2 players in the competition right now, in Riddell and Garner. There's not a lot that anyone can do about it at the moment, I don't think. Moving on to game number 2 of the weekend. It was straight after that on Friday night. We had a Friday night doubleheader. Both very important games. And this one looked like going down to the wire for a fair chunk of it. But Carlton finished the job in that final quarter to lock in a home final next week. And at the time, eliminate West Coast from finals contention. But as we said, West Coast did get that reprieve with Sydney going down to the Bombers in that surprise wet match on Saturday. 6-6-42 to 3-4-22. It was close most of the way through, within definitely 10 points all the way up until it finally got over 10 points for the first time of the match at the 15-minute mark of the 4th quarter. West Coast led a fair chunk of it too. They led from the 3-minute mark of the first quarter all the way through until the 7-minute mark of the 2nd quarter. And then it was goals for goal most of the way through. West Coast actually kicked the first goal of the last quarter through Lucia Painter to give them about a 5-point lead early in that quarter. But then, as I said, Carlton got the job done. Abby Mackay kicked one from a set shot. Tara Bahana got a 50-metre penalty, kicked a goal. Fitzpatrick kicked a running goal. And then if you haven't seen it already, I'm surprised you haven't, because it's been all over social media. But Darcy Vesio with the Torp after the siren from 45, just to cap off a really, really good game and end up winning by 20 points when it was very close until really it was probably the Bohana goal, to be honest, that really, really hurt the Eagles. It was within, 1 point at that point, and they gave away a 50. And sloppy, really. Carlton did the job, and they looked the better team in that last quarter and ran it out really well. So a little bit of a concern. Obviously, these two teams are going to be meeting up again this weekend, so that will be very interesting. And it will be in Melbourne this time, so a little bit more difficult for West Coast, sorry. But they still have plenty of talent. They were in this game up until the third quarter, so certainly won't be writing off their chances, but certainly you'd say Carlton are in the box seat based on this game. Team rating suggests that Carlton were the better team, and I think that's a fair summary. Best and fairest votes, we went Abby McKay, 3 votes, Ella Roberts 2, and Aaron's Aaron Fitzpatrick for the 1 vote, who's picked up a few votes this year. Fitzpatrick had a really, really good season in my eyes. Some team stats that were important in this one: 38 to 28 inside 50, so plus 10 for Carlton. The clearance game was pretty level, 26-24 in favour of the Eagles. Contested footy pretty close. Uncontested footy pretty close as well. Turnover game was really good from Carlton in this one. They only had 9, almost 10 less turnovers than their average, so really good performance there, and 7 less turnovers for the match than West Coast. So that ball use, looking after the footy, was really good from Carlton in this game. One of their better performances in that regard, even though their disposal efficiency was down. They weren't getting turnovers, which is really, really important. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else that stands out too much in the team stat side of things. Goal kickers, Tara Bohana was the only multiple goal scorer, kicking 2. Plenty of single goal kickers. No massive ball winners. 27 was the most by Ella Roberts. 24 and a goal for Abby Mackay. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else that stands out on the stat sheet. Just a really, really good performance from Carlton, and they locked in finals. They lock in a home final at Icon Park against the Eagles, so they'll be absolutely licking their lips at that prospect. Obviously, they win that. It's only going to get more difficult, but they've played some really good football this year, so I think they genuinely deserve a home elimination final, and I'd be surprised to see them go down this week, if I'm being completely honest with you. We move into Saturday football, and we kicked off with basically a dead rubber. Port Adelaide's season was already really over from pretty early in this season. They lost too many games early, but they certainly showed why they were a team that made a prelim final last year. They'll be disappointed with their season, but their best of football was certainly still good enough to play finals football, in my opinion. And the first quarter was a struggle. They were down 14-2 at quarter time, and it was like, oh dear, this is going to be a tough one. But then after quarter time, it was about halfway through the second quarter where they just piled on about 6 goals in the space of, I don't know, probably 10 minutes, if I'm being honest. Less than 10 minutes of real time. Put the game away just in that little 10-minute spurt. So really, really good performance from the Power. The big thing that happened in this game, without a doubt, was Gemma Houghton being the first player in AFLW history to get to 100 goals, 100 career goals. After the siren as well, in a little bit of theatre, GWS did their best to stop Houghton from getting that goal. She did manage 2 behinds in that last quarter before kicking that goal after the siren to win it. They had already won it, but to get the 100 goals. So outstanding achievement from Gemma Houghton this season. And yeah, that's basically that. Moving on to team rating. Obviously, Port Adelaide outrated them quite considerably in this game. No real surprise there. B&F votes, we went Matilda Schultz 3, Gemma Houghton 2, and Abby Dowrick 1. GWS just didn't have many answers certainly after quarter time, which basically sums up their season. I think they're just a little bit off the pace. Their best at times has been okay. They did win against Sydney in the derby, but too many games where they just didn't quite take it up to their opposition, I guess, is basically the long and the short of it. You look at the team stats here. They actually had more disposals than Port Adelaide by +9. Port Adelaide are a low disposal team, though, throughout most of the season, so maybe not that surprising. But the inside 50 count was ridiculously one-sided. +22 to Port Adelaide, 49 to 27. That's just a domination. Clearance game, absolute domination as well. 27 to 11, including 13 to 4 from centre clearances. Tells you pretty much everything you need to know about this Port Adelaide performance. They absolutely smoked them. Contested football plus almost 50, 135 to 89. GWS did control the uncontested side of the game, but the contested side was just absolute one-way traffic in favour of Port Adelaide, who just professional effort got the job done and finished the season on a high, which it was definitely a disappointing season for Port Adelaide, but they get a finish on a high. Here, key numbers, key stats, individual-wise, 3 multiple goal kickers, all Port Adelaide players. Gemma Houghton 4, Julia Teakle and Indy Tahu both kicked 2, which means Tahu is the leading goal kicker in the AFLW this season throughout the home and away season. Fantastic performance there. I also think Gemma Houghton might have been second best, so crazy amount of goals from Port Adelaide this year for a team that didn't even make it into the finals. As we said, pretty low disposal game, so there's no players with massive disposals. Nobody got many clearances. No massive tackle numbers. Metres gained, though, by Matilda Schultz in the ruck. Led the way with 568 metres gained. Emily Pease for GWS had 523. Pretty solid performance there. But just a really, really outstanding finish to Port Adelaide's season. They'll be looking to regroup next year. They had some injuries this year. They had some concerns, but they'll be looking to bounce back into contention next season, I would imagine. Next up, we had the bottom 2 battling it out. This was at Icon Park on Saturday afternoon. Not high hopes of this game being a great one, and let's be honest, it probably wasn't the best game of football you'll ever see. But Gold Coast put up arguably their best performance of the season to get their second win of the season. They still finish wooden spooner, but they get a finish on a high. So well done to them in this isolated performance. They were pretty good. Richmond kicked the first, but Gold Coast stayed in it. They were still within a kick through most of the last quarter and then managed to kick 3 quick ones in the back half of the final quarter to finish the game pretty strongly and win it by 14 points in the end. Their tools standing up, Darcy Davies and Havana Harris both kicking a goal in that last 5 minutes. Really, really good performance from a team that's had a really tough season. Their ability to stop opposition from scoring has been a massive concern all year, so to only concede 3 goals 7 here is a good effort. Granted, it was against Richmond, who only won 2 games for the season and up until round 7 or 8 hadn't won a match. So still a lot of work to do for Gold Coast, but some positive signs. They've got some really good young talent, so we'll see. They're obviously going to pick up some good players again this season. They've got some really good, really good academy players this season. So potentially they are a team that will, over the next 2 years, really bounce up towards at least the middle part, but maybe even higher on the ladder pretty quickly because of the amount of absolute talent they have about to enter this team. So that's a positive sign for them. Team ratings suggest Gold Coast were the better team, and there's absolutely no arguments from me. Richmond just did not put up a great performance here. B&F votes, Charlie Rowbottom have gone with 3, Lucy Single 2, and Grace Egan for the Tigers getting 1. There's been some big news about Grace Egan this week after the game. Apparently Richmond not offering a contract right now, so maybe fair game for other opposition teams to pick up Grace Egan, who certainly would be a handy midfield pickup for quite a few teams. So interesting decision there by Richmond. There must be reasons for it, but I don't quite see it. What else do we have to go through on this game? Stat-wise, Gold Coast had an extra 40 touches. They had an extra 3 inside 50s. They had an extra 8 clearances. So they pretty much just across the field looked really good. Uncontested and contested football winning. One of the lowest turnover games of the season for both teams. Pretty much for the whole league, really. It was 51 to 57. Gold Coast had 15 less than their average, and Richmond had 7 less than their average. So that's big numbers below, which is probably a sign of how this game was played. A lot slower than normal, not massive tackle numbers, maybe not as high pressure as some games we've seen. But Gold Coast, take nothing away from them. They were really, really good in this. Only one multiple goal scorer from Richmond, Emilia Yasia, kicked 2 goals too. Other than that, Charlie Rowbottom, 32 touches, was outstanding. Another really fantastic season from Charlie, including the last 4 or 5 weeks where I think 5 weeks was in the top 2 players for Gold Coast each of those 5 games. So really finished the season strong. No massive clearance numbers for anyone. Metres gained, Grace Egan had 516, which is quite massive. And McLaughlin for Gold Coast had 456. Moving on to the next game, we got Sydney Essendon, and this was the biggest upset of this, not the season, but certainly of the round, and an absolute disappointing end to the Swannies' season. It was at Coffs Harbour, Coffs International Stadium. It was a horrible game. Weather-wise, it got delayed at the start because of the weather. When they got out there, it took a long time for this game to peter into anything. There's been talk that it's the worst game of the season to watch. Maybe so, but the weather didn't help it. And Sydney didn't help their case by just not finding a way to do anything about it. And Essendon did what they needed to. It was 2 points to 0 at quarter time. Both of those points coming from Gladman for the Bombers. After that, first goal of the game was 11 minutes into the second quarter when Bonnie Toogood put the Bombers even further in front. It was 8-1 at halftime. Lost the plot there. It was still same score. Well, Sydney managed 1 point in the third quarter, 8-2 at 3/4 time. And then 20 seconds into the final quarter, the second goal of the game was kicked. 20 seconds is all it took in that quarter. Sophie Alexander kicking that one to put maybe the game out of reach. You thought for a little bit. Sydney did manage 3 behinds in quick succession midway through that final quarter. 2 of those back-to-back from Holly Cooper. And then Zippy Fish did manage a goal to kick Sydney's first of the match and get them within a kick with, 5-6 minutes to go. But they just couldn't find a way to get another one. And Essendon hold on to a 14-11 win. Low-scoring game. Team ratings suggest that Sydney actually probably rated higher than Essendon. But Essendon's game plan execution was just better than Sydney's, I think, in the end. And that's basically what we see. B&F votes, we went Georgia Nanscarlin with 3, Laura Gardner with 2, and Stephanie Kane with 1. Team stats, inside 50s was 30-27 in favour of Sydney. They also had 16 extra disposals. Weather was atrocious. Ground conditions were pretty terrible. So disposal efficiency numbers were way down on average for both teams. That's completely understandable. Clearance numbers, +9 for Sydney. So they did absolutely dominate some areas of this game, but they just couldn't put it together. Turnover numbers, not that high for the weather conditions. Tackle numbers obviously huge, and yeah, that sums up the team stats, I think, for this one. Individual stat wise, it's a tough read. There was only 3 goals kicked for the game, so no multiple goal scorers. Laura Gardner had 35 touches, which was 9 more than anybody else on the ground. Also had 16 tackles. Georgia Nanscowan had 18 tackles. Crazy numbers. Clearance numbers, Lucy McAvoy with 8. 5 to Montana Ham, but they just couldn't do anything with it. The Swans, until it was too late. And yeah, basically, their season ended in the worst fashion. Who saw them missing finals after 4 weeks when they were 4-0 and looking great? But they've got no one else to blame but themselves. When you look at it, they lost 3 games to bottom 4 teams, really. They lost GWS, bottom 5 teams, sorry, GWS, Collingwood, and Essendon this season, who finished, 14, 15, and 17, something like that. Crazy. You're not going to play finals if you're losing to 3 of the bottom 5 teams in the season. So they've only got themselves to blame. And that's basically the long and the short of Sydney's season, I think. And they'll come back better next year, you'd imagine. They've got some really good players developing, but just a wasted season in the end, I think, for Sydney, and they will be very disappointed with themselves. Saturday night football was Geelong-Melbourne. This was at GMHBA Stadium. Melbourne having a chance to secure a top 2 finish. They did it the hard way, as we kind of expected that Geelong would put up a bit of a fight. It's been the story of Geelong's last 2 seasons now, where they're right in there with fights with the best teams, but throughout the course of a season, they're just not quite getting enough wins, and that means they miss finals again. Their best is, I think, good enough to play finals football, but unfortunately for them, they just haven't been able to put it together. Team rating actually has Geelong rating higher than Melbourne in this game, surprisingly, seeing that they lost by 14 points in the end and did kick the last 2 goals of the match, so they were down by close to 5 goals before that. But overall, it was pretty close until early on in the third quarter when Eden Zanker kicked back-to-back goals to give them a little bit of breathing room, out to 10 points for the Demons. They then managed to extend it out to 23 points at 3-quarter time and just do enough in that last quarter. Basically is the long and the short of it. Melbourne just too strong in the end. 3 votes, Tyler Hanks, 2 to Michaela Bowen, and 1 to Georgie Prespakis is how we've gone in the voting for this game. The stats, disposal numbers pretty similar, +7 Geelong. Inside 50s was +8 for Melbourne, so they did control the ground pretty well. They also dominated the clearance game, +14. Uncontested footy was controlled by Geelong. Contested footy was pretty level. Tackle numbers was huge from Geelong. They did bring that, which is not something they've been great at this year. Massive tackle numbers. Average is 67 per game. They had 90 in this match. So they certainly did bring that, and that's probably a reason that they stayed competitively in this game throughout most of it. Player stats, we got Eden Zanker, kicked 4 goals, and then Nina Morrison and Michaela Bowen for Geelong, both kicking 2. Disposal numbers, 32 for Georgie Prespakis and 30 for Michaela Bowen. Fantastic efforts from both of them. Tackle numbers, as we said, Geelong had a lot. They had 3 players get over 10 in Rachel Kearns, 11, Prespakis and Morrison with 10 each. Tyler Hanks, 10 for Melbourne. Clearance numbers, 8 for Prespakis. Metres gained, 604 once again for Prespakis. So really outstanding performance from Georgie Prespakis, who rated as the highest player for Geelong on the ground. Really, really good finish to the season for her. I don't think there's too much else to go on here. Geelong miss finals and Melbourne get a home qualifying final and a golden opportunity to win that and get a home prelim and hopefully, for their sake, avoid North Melbourne. until potentially a grand final day. Would at least be their plan. Moving on to Sunday football, and we kicked off in 31 degrees in Victoria for Collingwood v Brisbane at Victoria Park, and Brisbane did what they needed to secure third spot on the AFL ladder and set up a day with Melbourne coming up this weekend in the qualifying final. 20-point winners, 6-16. They wasted a lot of opportunities, the Lions, in this one. Collingwood stuck around, but you just felt like Brisbane were clearly on top most of the game, just unable to put that massive margin on, mainly due to the poor kicking. First quarter, Collingwood were right in it. They kicked the first goal. It was, 15-8 quarter time. After that, though, it was kind of one-way most of the way, except for a little spurt in the third quarter where Collingwood kicked back-to-back goals. Other than that, it was one-way traffic. Brisbane outrated them massively, +20 in the ratings. BNF votes, we went all road Dwyer with 3, Ali Anderson 2, and Isabel Dawes with 1 vote. Team stats will tell the story. +22 inside 50s for the Lions, +50 odd disposals. So they did control that area of the game as well. +10 in clearances, 11-4 in the centre clearance game. I think that number was probably extenuated by the fact that Britt Benici was a late out for Collingwood, who's obviously one of the big workhorses in the midfield for Collingwood. So I think that out did hurt them a little bit in the guts there for Collingwood, but overall Brisbane dominated that side of things. Contested footy was +30, Lions +30 uncontested. Just 58 turnovers for the Lions was a good number, +10 in that area on Collingwood. So it was just one-way traffic. Collingwood really low tackle count. Well, both teams low tackle count, but Collingwood very low. After they absolutely brought the pressure on Gold Coast last week, they couldn't repeat that against the Lions here this week. That was team stats. Player stats, only one multiple goal scorer. That was Taylor Smith for the Lions with 2. Disposal numbers, not massive from anyone. Leader was 26 for Ali Anderson. As we said, tackle numbers were pretty low for both teams, so nothing to stand out there. Clearance numbers, all Brisbane players, they absolutely dominated that side of the fence, and there was not massive metres gained or goal assist numbers for anyone really. Brisbane, they'll be stoked. Another top 4 finish. They really are set up, I think, for a really big run at making a grand final, but that all hinges on a really good performance this week against Melbourne. This is as big a game as you could imagine, because you go down this one, then there's a very, very, very good chance you're going to end up having to come back to Melbourne in 2 weeks' time to play North Melbourne, which won't be easy in a prelim final. So a lot riding on this game of Melbourne v Brisbane this weekend. Moving on to the next one, and it was the other big upset for the weekend. St Kilda had a chance to lock in a home elimination final, and they let themselves down. Perhaps felt like they didn't have as much to play for. I don't know, because finals had been guaranteed before they walked out onto the park. But it just was not a great performance from them. Their first quarter was competitive, but the Bulldogs just did what the Bulldogs have done against a lot of teams, and that's blow them away quickly, and it was done in the second half. It was 1 goal apiece at quarter time. Half time it was out to 28-14, so 14-point margin. Still not disastrous, but a couple late goals in the third quarter extended it out to 23 points at 3-quarter time, and then just competitive onslaught again. 4 goals to 1 in the final quarter, just blew it out to 72-27. Really, really, really bad way for St Kilda to finish their home and away season. Heading into finals, that's not how you want to do it, I don't believe. Team rating, Bulldogs were clearly the better team. First and Ferris votes, Ellie Blackburn 3 votes, Sarah Posty 2 votes, who granted also got the Rising Star nomination for this week, and Jessica Fitzgerald 1 vote. No surprise, Bulldogs dominated this game on the stat sheet. +23 inside 50s, getting 50 for the match. They do this against low-ranked teams regularly. where they absolutely tear them apart. They did it against Collingwood. They did it against Essendon. They did it against someone else as well. They did it last year as well against multiple bottom teams. Their issue has always been against the better teams, they haven't been able to win. Well, they did it here. So maybe a better start to their season and things could have been different. But I think we said this late last year as well. They're a dangerous team. You don't want to be playing them too often because their best is very good. If they can find a way to take that next step, watch out. Because maybe, just maybe, they could be very dangerous. Clearances were 31-14. 22-8 on stoppage clearances. Absolute domination from the Dogs. Bless me. There's just no side of this game where they didn't dominate. It was just absolutely great performance from them. Great finish to their year. St Kilda, I don't know what to say about it. Maybe we just forget about it, but it was a really, really bad performance in my eyes from the Saints. Not the sort of performance you want to see heading into a finals series. Player stats, 3 multiple goal kickers, 2 for the Doggies, Emma McDonald and Deanna Berry, both kicking 2 goals apiece, and Janome Anderson kicking 2 for the Saints. Disposal numbers, only one player had over 20 touches in this game, which was Serena Watson for the Saints. In the back line, no other massive numbers anywhere other than 6 clearances for Pousty and Fitzgerald, and 618 metres gained for Serena Watson. So Doggies finish on a high. Obviously end up 12th on the ladder, but their percentage was huge, 126.5, because they did blow a lot of teams out of the water. So that's a really good positive sign for them. 12th on the ladder, not great. 5 wins, 7 losses, but maybe a couple results just going the other way. They only lost by 11 points to Geelong, and 19 points to Port Adelaide. Those couple go the other way, and they end up all of a sudden with a home elimination final. So they're not that far off the pace in my eyes. St Kilda, they still finished 7th. They've made their first final series. They lost their last 2 games going into finals, so that's a bit of a worry. They also play Adelaide in Adelaide this week. That's also a concern. And their percentage was really, really low. Ended up 87.5. So they do play finals thanks to 7-5 record, but that percentage is a concern. If we were to order the teams by percentage, I'm fairly confident that it would not read too well for the Saints. If I can figure out how to do this, just give me 2 seconds and it will. I would imagine they will be very low on the ladder. So 12th highest percentage in the competition. Only teams below them are Fremantle, who granted weren't that far from finals. 1 win really. And then it's all the teams that really struggle. The 5 bottom teams, Collingwood, Essendon, Richmond, GWS and Gold Coast. So not great signs, if we're being completely honest. But that is football sometimes, and that is how it is. They play finals and it all starts fresh, but I am concerned about their chances of progressing much further. One final game of the weekend, and it was win and you play finals, lose and your season is done. It was Adelaide Fremantle at Norwood Oval, and the Crows prevailed. 4-5-29 to 2-5-17. Wasn't pretty, but they got the job done. They kicked the first. It was 1 point in favour of Fremantle at quarter time. Adelaide kicked the only goal of the second quarter. It was staying around that margin most of the way through. It was 5 points in it at 3-quarter time, and then the only goal of the last quarter was Anne Hatchard in game 100 to seal the deal, and the Crows get the job done, plus 12 points in the end. Really, really good performance from the Crows. They did what they needed to. I don't think they've been at their best most of this season. They've been a little bit below their best, which has cost them. A couple teams have jumped them. Pre-season, they certainly looked like they were going to be a top 4 team. same time, Fremantle looked like they were going to be a top 8 team this year, and they just let themselves down with too many losses. They had a chance to play into the finals with a win here. They didn't manage to do that, but you can't take too much away from them. They were pretty solid throughout most of the year, but just a couple performances that could have gone either way is probably the difference for them. Team ratings suggest Adelaide were a little bit ahead of Fremantle in this game, and that's how it played out. BNF votes, we went Ebony Marinoff with 3 votes, Sarah Goodwin with 2, and Mim Strom with 1 vote. Team stats, no massive numbers. Fremantle actually had more inside 50s, +5, 39 to 34. Disposal numbers pretty close. Clearance numbers slightly in favour of Fremantle. Contested footy pretty level. Uncontested pretty level. High turnover game, which Fremantle have been accustomed to most of this season. Really high turnover numbers. And overall, a lot of stats pretty level. But in the end, Adelaide's experience and I guess both teams are very talented, but just their experience and top end players just got them across the line in the end, I think. 1 multiple goal kicker, Grace Kelly with 2. Disposal numbers, Gabrielle Newton was leader with 28. Most for Adelaide was 26 for Ebony Marinoff, who also had 14 tackles to be the first AFLW player to ever reach 1,000 tackles in AFLW career. So outstanding effort by Noffy there. Mim Strom was huge, 23 touches and 6 clearances, but just couldn't get the job done in the end for the Dockers, who had their chances, just didn't take them. Pretty much sums up that game for you. That's how both these teams finish their home and away season. Adelaide get a home elimination final. They get a good chance at making a run towards at least a prelim, potentially. Whereas Fremantle, their season's done. They'll be disappointed. I'm slightly disappointed in them. I did pick them for a team that would go up the ladder this year, and they let me down. But that's football sometimes. We'll move on to how my tips went for the weekend. And it was a tough weekend, one that we fell apart on after a pretty solid season throughout most of the year. Wasn't to be. We got Kangaroos right. We said by 29. They won by 49, so not too bad. We then get the next one wrong. We knew it'd be close. We went Eagles by 4. Carlton finished too strong to win by 20. Port Adelaide, we get that one right. We said 36. They won by 57. They were way too strong for the Giants. We said the Tiggies by 16, but Gold Coast just pulled out a really good performance and won by 14. Sydney just had nothing. The weather played a big part in that, but the Bombers won by 3, so we get that one wrong. Demons won by 14, very close on the margin there. Lions won by 20, once again pretty close. St Kilda let us down. They lost by 45 points in a really disappointing effort. And the Crows, we finish with that one correct. We said 8 points, they won by 12. So we go 5 of 9 for the week. 77 out of 108 on the season. Pretty solid numbers. Not fantastic, but pretty solid. Better than our AFLW season, I feel. Our award leaderboards, BNF. This is crazy because maximum score for the season would have been 36 votes, and Ash Riddell has gone and got 32 from us. Missed out on 4 votes for the season. I don't know if Ash will actually get 32. I genuinely believe she probably deserves it. Some of the numbers Ash Riddell put up this year is absolutely freakish. Absolutely deserves to win. If Ash Riddell does not win the league best and fairest this year, they'll be hearing from me, because that will be the biggest rort of a system you'll ever see. Absolutely should be the runaway winner. Ella Roberts, fantastic season, missed second last game, still ends up second on 21. And we have a really tight race after that. We've got 4 players on 19. Ebony Marinoff, last year's winner. Ali Anderson from Brisbane. Kate Hoare, fantastic season. Jasmine Garner, who obviously missed a game and a half for North Melbourne, got 19. Then 2 players on 18, Georgie Praspakas from Geelong and Laura Gardner from Sydney. 17 for Kiara Bowers. 16 for Georgia Nanscowan and Isabel Pritchard. 14 for Emily Pease from the Giants. And then 13 for Brittany Benici and Monique Conti for the Tigers. So that's how the BNF wraps up. This is obviously our votes that we do for every single game. And then MVP, as we said, 10 votes go to the best player for the winning team, 8 for second best. Top 5 players for each team get votes. We went through that earlier. After 12 rounds, this is how it shapes up. Ash Riddell, I think, goes back to back with 92 votes here. Her and Garner were dead level on 82 going into the final round. Ash Riddell was best on. Jasmine Garner got 2 votes as North Melbourne's 5th best, so ends up 8 votes behind in second. Noffy gets 76 votes for third spot. Ella Roberts 75 in fourth. Laura Gardner with 66. Ali Anderson 65. Georgia Nan Scarwin and Kate Hoare each on 64. Lucy Wales on 63. Missed the last 3 games of the season. Was well in contention at that point. Probably wouldn't have won, but probably would have been top 3 just about. Georgia Prespakis with 60. Mim Strom 58. Mon Conti with 55. Kiara Bowers and Matilda Schultz with 54. And Gabrielle Newton gets 53. In our Rising Star votes, top 5 rated Rising Star eligible players each week get votes. 5 for the best, highest rated player, 4 for next, 3, 2, 1. And this is how it shapes up. Runaway winner, no doubt about it. If Sippy Fish doesn't win the Rising Star, there's something completely wrong. Should win the Rising Star and should also be All-Australian this season. Fantastic year, debut season from Zippy Fish. Behind her, it goes Havana Harris and Poppy Schultz, both on 14. Lucia Painter and Laura Stone on 11 apiece. Jessica Wrench on 10. Centra from Collingwood and Wotherspoon from Melbourne on 9 apiece. Sarah Polstig, after a really good finish to the year, gets 7 votes. Sophie McKay with 5, as well as Holly Ridewood, who got 5 votes very early in the season. Maybe dropped off towards the back half of the year, but still showed some good talent out on the wing early season. So that's all of that. We'll now jump into our Week 1 Finals preview. So we kick off Finals Week 1 with a rematch of last Friday night with North v Hawthorn. This one at Icon Park, obviously. Last week was a Hawthorn home game. This one, Kangaroos. That was the first time these two teams had met in the AFLW. And it was controlled one way. 49-point winners, Kangaroos. I don't know if you need to read too much into this game because is there a hope that Hawthorn win? Sure. It's very, very slim though. Strange things happen sometimes, but this Kangaroos team just has been so professional throughout this season. Can we see it realistically being this one? Not really. 12-0, perfect home and away season. They were basically perfect last year, just had that one draw. They're not doing anything wrong. Until they do, you can't tip against them really, I don't think. So it's a tough one for Hawthorn. Obviously, last year, their finals campaign was a disappointing one. They perhaps had an easy home and away season last year, which led them to be a little bit higher on the ladder than maybe they should have been. They went out in straight sets. There's a little bit of a danger that that could happen again this year. Obviously, this one to start off is not an easy game. They'll get another crack at it in week 2 if they are to lose against Kangaroos, but they certainly need to show a bit more than they did last weekend, I think. Their best football is good. I don't think it's good enough to compete with the Kangaroos. You just look at average numbers across a season for both of these teams. Kangaroos average 70 extra disposals, basically, than Hawthorn throughout this season. They average an extra 13 inside 50s per game, an extra 4 clearances per game. It's just their disposal efficiency is almost 68% Kangaroos. Hawthorn across the season is 58. That's 10% worse. It's hard to see a world where anyone can compete with the Kangaroos, but certainly I can't see it being Hawthorn. Not right now. They have a little bit of work to do to catch up, in my opinion. So second time these teams will ever meet, and it's the second time in a week, which is crazy in itself. But I think it's a good result for Kangaroos. Probably the team they would have liked to have played the most out of the top four was probably Hawthorn. At least that's how I would have seen it. I could be wrong. Maybe Hawthorn will make an absolute joke of me. It could happen. But Kangaroos absolutely in the box seat in this one. Elimination final is Saturday night. We've only got the one Saturday game. For some reason, we've got a double header on Sunday, but AFLW have decided that's how we're playing it. What to make of this one? It's an interesting one. Carlton West Coast at Icon Park. Obviously, these two teams did meet last week over in the West. Carlton were too strong then. They won by 20 points. They met 2 years ago in round 3. Carlton won that one by 53 points. So West Coast yet to beat the Blues. Last week suggested that Carlton are perhaps slightly ahead of West Coast. Certainly, that's what it looked like to me. It was close most of the way, but it was also a West Coast home game, whereas this one's back at Icon Park. I think that will benefit Carlton greatly. West Coast, you can't rule them out, but they did lose 3 of their last 4 games. One of them against Adelaide, one against Sydney, one against Carlton. So all 3 teams were right in the finals race, 2 of them making finals. But not the best form to be going into finals with. I know Carlton did lose back-to-back games only a few weeks ago against Sydney and then St Kilda. But they turned it around. They beat GWS and then they finished with a really good win against West Coast. The numbers, I think, point towards Carlton winning this game. Not massively, but I think they just, across the board, are slightly better, slightly further ahead than West Coast. Don't get me wrong, West Coast best is good enough to win this game of football. I think it will probably be pretty close. It'll come down to a few moments here or there. And I think overall Carlton has the greater potential across their list to get those moments going their way, whereas West Coast will be relying on Ella Roberts and a couple other players to have those X-factor moments that turn the game. So Carlton, I see having the greater chance of that across the field, whereas West Coast I see as relying too much on certain players to be that spark and be that game changer. We move into Sunday. There's 2 games, as I said. The first one's in Melbourne, 3rd game at Icon Park. It's Melbourne-Brisbane. Long and storied history between these 2 teams. Obviously met 2 weeks ago up in Brisbane and the Lions got the 9-point win. They met once last season, which the Brisbane Lions won by 18 points in week 2. And then they also met the year before and the Lions won that one by 25. So Brisbane have a really good record over the last couple of seasons against Melbourne. This one's in Melbourne. It's going to be a close game. It was close 2 weeks ago. Melbourne played really quite good against Brisbane up in Brisbane, but the Lions were just too strong in the end. This is probably going to go similar. However, Brisbane's form is absolutely outstanding. They started the season a little bit slow, but boy oh boy did they turn it around. Granted, outside of that Melbourne game 2 weeks ago, they haven't had the toughest run over the last 5 weeks, but winning form is good form. The numbers across the board, both teams pretty level in many ways. Trying to find where the difference is between these 2 teams. They play similar but different, if that kind of makes sense. I don't know if it does or not. A lot of areas are the same. I think Melbourne probably have the better star power, maybe, whereas Brisbane are just an elite team across the park. Like, every single player steps up and plays their role and does the job, whereas you look at Melbourne and it's regularly the same people starring, and don't get me wrong, it works. It might work here, but that's just how I see it. They obviously have multiple key forwards, multiple forward targets, Melbourne, so they'll be relying on that. Their form's not fantastic. They did lose twice in the last 5 weeks, once to Fremantle and once to Brisbane, obviously both away games. It's hard to pick this one. Brisbane are starting slight favourites by the looks of things. It's certainly I think, the most likely game to go either way of the weekend. It should be the game of the weekend, I think. Certainly one to tune into on Sunday afternoon. Would have liked this one to have been a Saturday night game, but it is what it is. So that should be a cracker. Winner gets a home prelim, which will be absolutely massive, whether that's in Melbourne or Brisbane. You'll probably likely play Hawthorn or Carlton, I guess, in that prelim. So really big opportunity for the winner of this game. Final game of the week is heading across to Adelaide, the only one not in Victoria this week. Adelaide v St Kilda at Norwood Oval. It could have well been in Victoria if St Kilda had have won last weekend, but they didn't, and now they have to travel to Adelaide, and that is not great for them. Adelaide will be starting strong favourites, no real surprise. They did meet in round one this year, and St Kilda got the job done by 22 points. If you think back to that game, it was a massive surprise that they won that one, but they kept putting it together most of the season, St Kilda. I don't know. They were just the better team across that game, whereas I think Adelaide's best is better. Unfortunately for Adelaide, they haven't shown that too many times this season, their best level of football. Will we see that in this one? You'd hope so on the Adelaide side of things. Both teams ended 7-5. Neither team fantastic. Adelaide lost 3 out of 4 there at one point. Losing to Richmond was the big one. Obviously, the Kangaroos one was an expected loss, and losing the showdown was a bit disappointing for them. But at the end of the day, they did enough to play finals, so they'll be semi-happy with that. They get a home elimination final. If they were to win that, week 2 is not going to be easy for them, but all you can do is one game at a time. On the other side of the fence, St Kilda, they lost their last 2 games. They'll be absolutely gutted about that. If they had won both of those, it probably wouldn't have mattered. They would have still finished 5th. Well, they would have had a home final. So when I say it doesn't matter, it wouldn't have mattered if they won 1 or 2 games. They would have pretty much finished 5th. Obviously, 2 weeks ago was against Kangaroos, so you could completely forget that one. They weren't terrible in that game, but the Bulldogs loss was a bad one. But their best has been good. They beat Carlton 3 weeks ago. That is a huge win. They beat Adelaide this year, so they're not without chance in this game. I think the stats suggest that Adelaide are certainly the better team across the board. Most numbers point towards Adelaide controlling this game, but Adelaide have not been able to take their chances well enough this year. And they've been not blowing teams out. They're struggling, not hugely to score, but just consistently score enough to comfortably win, which is keeping teams in games. And I think that is a concern. St Kilda, on the other side of things, do have the ability to score quite well. They haven't been able to over the last 4 or 5 weeks, though. So that is a concern as well for St Kilda. Either way, I think Adelaide should start favourites in this. It's their home ground. They have the experience on their side, but you can never write off a team, I don't think, in finals. They're in finals for a reason. They've made it this far for a reason. So that will be Sunday afternoon football this week. My tips for the week: we're going Kangaroos by 35. They should be way too strong for it. Hawthorn, based on everything we've seen this year, it's very, very hard to tip against them. Carlton by 7 points over the Eagles. This is a game that could go both ways. I'm going Carlton. It's in Melbourne. They showed last week that they're good enough to beat West Coast, so I'm sticking true with the Blues. Only 3 or 4, probably 5 weeks ago, they were top 4 on the ladder and having a really good season, the Blues. So both them and the Eagles could have finished top 4 with a better finish to their year over the last 4 or 5 weeks, but in the end, they finished 6 and 7, and no, they don't. They were 5 and 8, weren't they? 5 and 8. Sorry, but a really competitive game, this one on Saturday night, and one I'm looking forward to. I enjoy watching both Carlton and West Coast play, so that is a game I'm looking forward to watching. Sunday, Brisbane. I'm going with Brisbane. The tried and true formula. Don't back against a winning team, and right now Brisbane are a winning team. They've won a lot of games in a row. Their best, both teams' best is good enough in this game. It's one that absolutely could go either way. It's certainly one that you should watch as well. It will be a fascinating watch. But I've gone with Brisbane by 5. And to wrap it up, I think Adelaide will be just too strong for St Kilda. I think their composure early will probably give them an early lead in this game, and they'll just kind of hold on to that. So I've got them by 21 points. That's pretty much a wrap for this episode. I'm not sure how long it went for, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot out of it. Obviously, home and away season is wrapped up. We're going to be doing another episode every single week, all the way through to the end of the season for the AFLW, wrapping up each game, previewing the upcoming games. So stick around. Make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button, depending what platform you're on right now. Head over to the YouTube as well if you're not there already. Hit that subscribe button. Plenty of content all the time. Check out the social medias, All Aussie Rules everywhere. We're going to have AFL men's content coming out soon. We had one episode this week. 2 weeks' time, we'll have a draft preview episode, and then the week after that, we will have a draft wrap-up video. So there is a lot of content still to come on All Aussie Rules for 2025. So make sure you stick around. Hope you enjoyed this one. If your team is still in the race for the AFLW title, I hope they have a good game this weekend. I'm Jay. This has been another episode 81 of season 2025. And I'll catch us on the next one.